Okay, I'm back with Charlie Elliott for the last in our series, going over the round that was in the Six Nations and going over the Six Nations as a whole, because it is done. France are the champions. Charlie, welcome once again. How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, Rich.
Brilliant, brilliant. Charlie, a writer for Sports News Blitz and the Rugby Paper. We've been chewing the fat, a bit more relaxed style after each round. So Charlie tends to start us off with some information that he's come up with, some ideas. So we'll work from the bottom up, say what we think about each campaign of the nation. So it is Wales who are last in this Six Nations, second year in a row with 0 wins. Where do you want to go with Wales?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different places to go, but first of all, it was obviously a horrible campaign for them. That goes without saying. That's not revolutionary. The positive is that they've got rid of Gatland because that was getting stale, as again most people knew anyway. But they've finally bit the bullet and got rid of him. There was a slight upturn of results when Sherritt came in, but yeah, that England game has massively took the shine off of those two good performances. So it's almost back to square one. And as we've said a few times now, the head coach appointment is the crucial one for Wales. So yeah,
Yeah, but they've got to do director of rugby. Sounds like they can do that first and then head coach. So loads to do in the Wales camp for sure. I was chatting to Glenn Webb, the former Welsh international, yesterday actually, and he was talking about actually losing against England, as crazy as it sounds, kind of not is the best thing for them, but kind of just illustrates that there's still loads to do, and it's not like they turn the corner as such. It was just a fresh breath of fresh air, wasn't it, with Sherrod? So I'd say they had one really good game, which was probably the Wales Ireland one. That kind of bounced back the new attacking style. Against Scotland, they were losing pretty heavily. Then Finn Russell and some of the others went on, and Scotland fell away, and they came back a bit. And then, of course, against England, everything went wrong. So, like you say, it's they had to unfortunately part ways with Gatland. It just wasn't working, and the question is now what? Coach, director of rugby, restructure. What do you reckon? What do you think they can do? Any ideas?
in terms of who I think should be the new coach, or
Yeah.
uh, it's a tough one because I've really been umming and ahhing with myself about Michael Checker as a short-term solution, not as the long-term answer,
Right.
but as a short-term to the World Cup and after the World Cup.
Oh,
Well,
okay, 2 years, so not that short term then.
yeah, possibly not for the World Cup, but definitely in the build-up to it. So I've really been umming and ahhing because he is definitely not the long-term solution.
I don't think
But
he'd be well received, to be honest, from what I'm hearing.
yeah, I mean, but then you're looking at some of the names. I can't exactly remember all of the names on the list, but I saw a list that was apparently had some credibility behind, and it was pretty poor viewing. I'm trying to wrap my brains as
Well,
to the exact people on that list. There's about six of them, but
yeah, the new favourite at the moment that I saw today is Pat Lamb of Bristol, which
yeah,
would be exciting. I don't know how much he knows about the Welsh players, but you know, he plays, if they play like Bristol do, or even slightly like Bristol do, then it's going to be, another step up on the attacking intent. I mean, it could be very exciting. I don't know how
yeah,
successful it would be at international if that's how he wanted to go, because we've gone from Gatland at the beginning of the tournament, who's very pragmatic, then to Sherrod, who's a lot more attacking minded, and we saw really good attacking shapes even in that England game, to be fair. And if he went to Pat Lamb, then I mean they would just be attacking from everywhere if they do the
yeah.
Bristol blueprint, which is what he seems to believe in. So I mean it'd be exciting.
Yeah, but whether they have the players to do that, I'm not sure. But maybe someone like Franco Smith, he'd be a decent option. I mean, Easterby seems like he doesn't want the job, but he'd also be a pretty decent option. But yeah, it's a really tough one to be honest because like they're in such a big hole. It's hard to see anyone who's going to come in and have an instant impact. And yeah, and
Well,
it's about how much time you give someone.
whoever it is, I think they need to give them time, and I think it needs to be someone who really knows, the Welsh players, the clubs, at least having played in the league. in the URC, that sort of thing. So it's going to be a real biggie. That director of rugby is going to be a real biggie. How they're going to restructure. I'm guessing they're going to do something with the academies, maybe bring back the national academy. I don't think they're going to ditch a region. I mean, that would be big. But I mean,
Yeah.
their under-20s had a really good tournament. So we're talking about talent coming through. They beat Italy, they beat Ireland, and they beat England. I mean, that's serious going. And they've got players there. I mean, you can like literally name some players who surely are going to play for Wales in a few years. Stefan Emmanuel, the centre, was amazing. I mean, literally looks amazing. Harry Thomas, the hooker, was just an absolute beast. Harry Rees Weldon, the winger, reminded me of George North. So, I mean, they've got some talent there, and they've got 4 pro clubs. So if they get it right, there's no reason they can't do a lot better.
And I mean, the 4 pro clubs though right now are having quite low attendances and stuff like that. I don't want to speak for Wales, but possibly ditching one of those might be good. But obviously, then that comes with, that comes with job losses and fans and all of that stuff. But I think if you're looking at it solely from improving the national team, I think it might work. But obviously, there's all the
Yeah,
external
it's
factors.
tricky, isn't it? Because once they're gone, really. I mean, there's no really going back. So I think you have to be pretty sure, and then it's which one. I mean, I don't really want to go into it too detailed, but I mean, I can only see them going to 2 if they're going to do it. Go for 2, go for West and East Wales, and then you have some identity. But then I think then you're, losing a lot of players. But anyway,
Yeah,
the other
yeah,
question with Wales is Georgia. They've smashed the European Rugby Championship yet again, and was 8 times or something I heard in a row.
yeah.
I mean, I looked at the results today, and they properly smashed it. And they're saying, let's have a playoff. Where do you stand with that briefly before we move on?
I would love to see a playoff, but it's just not going to happen in
Not
reality.
going to
'Cause
happen, no.
with the Six Nations, I mean, yeah, they're not gonna vote to jeopardize their place in the competition. But I'd love to see it happen, and yeah, it would be great to see the Six Nations as more of a meritocracy. But yeah, it's not
Yeah.
going to happen.
Yeah, I think that, their stake, each nation is a stakeholder. So you'd kind of be turkeys voting for Christmas. And if it's Wales one year, it could be them the next year. So it's like,
Yeah,
I can't see it. But you can see George's point. They're stuck in the middle. They're too good for the lower tier. They can't get into the higher tier. It's a seriously tough situation.
yeah, and it's really hampering development over there, from what I've heard and seen. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and money really. I mean,
well, yeah,
the access to the big bucks. Okay, I mean we could go on about that forever. So let's move up one in the table to Italy. They got their win, the one they needed. Italy at home to Wales. They got it done, and then they lost the rest fairly handily, to be honest. Where do you see them?
it was pretty par to what we expected. I mean, as you've said, beat Wales, which was what they'd have been looking at as the game for them to determine their competition. But yeah, I mean, apart from that, it was not amazing. Some good performances as always. You look at Menoncello, Brex,
Yeah,
they were good as always. But yeah, it was. I mean, it's a positive that they're not finishing bottom every year like
yep,
they have
absolutely.
done in the past, and it
It
shows
wasn't
how
long
far
ago,
they've
yeah. It
came.
wasn't long ago. People were saying, "Look, Italy are embarrassing the Six Nations. They need to
Mm.
go," and they've shown they are good enough.
Yeah, so it's positive in that sense, but we're almost talking up as a bit of a disappointment from Italy, even though they've not finished bottom. But yeah, I mean, about what was expected, really. I'd say they had the least interesting campaign of all the teams in terms of doing what was expected, really.
Yeah, they're an interesting one, Italy, because I think in one respect it's true. It is the best Italian side ever, no doubt. They're a very tidy side indeed. They attack very complex, but then when it comes to it, they haven't quite got that grunt up front. No, they can't really grind a game and just keep a team out with epic defense the whole time. They kind of have a big half in them and just can't keep it going. But they're a good side. I mean, and the team, when you look at the players, they've matured together from a young team to now kind of like a middle age team, if you like, rugby wise. And then
Yeah.
they've got, a good, 2, 3, 4 years together as that team. So they could get better. I mean, there's no reason why they can't get a bit better, but they still need a couple more stars. They need a couple more big power guys to really compete.
Yeah, and yeah, they're still a little bit away from the other nations, but they're pretty clear of Wales at the minute, so they'll take that all day long, I feel. But yeah,
Yeah, and the positive is that's a new rivalry now. I mean, it is. Italy, Wales, I think for the next couple of years is a biggie, which is good. And I look forward to the Italian games. I think in the past they were very much oh, will the teams get a bonus point? Whereas now you're thinking, oh, could beat Wales. They should beat Wales. Can they
yeah,
beat someone else? So it's definitely stepped up a bit.
yeah. And I'll tell you what, imagine how exciting that rivalry between the two would be if they were fighting for a spot to potentially play Georgia in a playoff.
Oh, it would add a massive layer, or just like an exhibition after the Six Nations in the summer. They have this kind of, proving that they are as good, even though they can't go up. I don't know.
Yeah,
It'll be interesting. But again, the attendances for Italy, I think that's something. Look, they're in the 60,000, 65,000. They're selling out. They're not quite selling out, but they're selling a lot of tickets. They're playing attractive rugby. They're, well-known names. It's going well. It's going pretty well for them, I think.
yeah, definitely a positive time to be an Italy fan.
Yeah, they could have done without losing by 73 points or conceding 73 points against France because, that feels like, ooh, maybe they can get rolled over again. But, I mean, apart from that, it was, well, I don't know. France and England pumped them, to be fair. So there's work to do to play the full 80.
Yeah, true, but still, I think they'll take it.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Okay, Scotland. What have you got for us on Scotland then?
I've put it's a very Scottish campaign. That's my notes. It was very Scotland from
So the
them.
Italian one was very Italian and the Scottish one was very Scottish, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, listen, not quite getting over the line. A lot of hype going into the tournament, and didn't quite deliver without massively failing. That was how I'd describe Scotland's campaign.
Yeah, I mean, they beat Italy well and then they went to Ireland. Well, no, they were at home to Ireland, weren't they? With lots of hope again. I mean, the Scottish fans, lots of hope and then dashed by Ireland. And then, but they could have beaten England if only,
Mm,
loads of if onlys there. That could have
yeah,
turned it. So if they beat England, that changes things a fair bit, I think. So,
yeah, definitely.
but you still can't see them winning it at the moment. That's the thing, isn't it?
No. And on paper, I actually thought they had a squad not necessarily capable of winning, but capable of competing a little bit more. I think depth's obviously still an issue for them,
Depth is
but
an issue, yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
but that's been an issue for years now, really.
True. I mean, they had a few injuries, but I mean that happens in rugby.
Mm,
You say Tupelutu starting, and then you could have say Jordan on the bench. Cam Redpath wasn't around. Bayliss, the back rower, Christie, the back rower. So there were some guys there. Um, Cummings as well wasn't there. So if they were full strength and a few things went their way, so let's say they beat England, and then there was yellows and red cards in another game, they can win. It's
yeah.
possible.
Mm.
But
Yeah, but I still think it's a bit of a tall order at the minute when you compare it to the top three sides. I think there's a bit of a gap there.
yeah, I mean, again, under 20s, I think did fairly better, did a bit better this year. They've normally been the bottom of the bottom
Yeah, well,
in the
they're
under
not still near
20s.
the bottom though. I thought they were
Uh, I
quite
think
low down.
we'll have a look at that, but I think they did a bit better this year, definitely. Certainly performance-wise, watching them, they look better.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I mean, what they've done in the past is they've had clever recruitment strategies. I'm not saying they shouldn't do that. It's very transparent. How long can they keep that going? They
mm.
need these under 20s to come through. So we'll see. How long will this side stick together? Will they start to dip down again? Can they keep it going? It's going to be interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's slightly on the aging side, I'd say. Not necessarily a cause for concern yet, but it's beyond its prime, I'd say.
Yeah, I think they're in the last years of their prime. You're right. You've got Italy kind of
Mm.
in the middle of their prime, and then Scotland just fading out. I mean, when it's kind of basically when Finn Russell goes, that's kind of the end of that era. I think that's kind of the indication, isn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely.
Okay, Ireland. Ireland's campaign. What did you make of that?
Very disappointing. They never really got going. Even the games that they were winning relatively convincingly, but without really pulling up any trees. So even that France performance aside, I think it wasn't an amazing campaign for them. And then you add the France performance into the mix. I mean, that was very poor from them. They were massively outplayed on that day. But yeah, just not quite at their level. And given the fact they've obviously had the success in recent years, they'll be hugely disappointed to not win it, let alone finish third, which they ended up doing.
Yeah, I thought to be fair, if you didn't know how good Ireland had been over the last few years, you'd say, oh, that's pretty good. And I think the standards expected are so high, it seems probably more disappointing than it kind of is in a way. But like you said, they won against England fairly comfortably, even though the score lines are
Yeah.
close. They won comfortably against Scotland. They won against Wales. So you think, right, they're really kicking into gear, and now they're going to turn it on against France, and they couldn't. That was the killer, wasn't it? I mean, they were
Mm.
3 from 3, and they got absolutely squashed. After the first hour was probably okay, but then they got proper squash, and that knocked the stuffing out of them. And that Italy game was weird because they still had a chance to win the thing, but it just, I don't know, the edge wasn't quite there, was it? And it kind of finished with a bit of a whimper.
Yeah, but I'd say as well for the first two games, the England and Scotland games, I actually thought they were a little bit disappointing. Maybe it is because of the high expectations, but it never seemed like they properly got going. They were obviously they did enough to win and win relatively comfortably, but I don't know, it never really felt like they got out of sort of second, third gear to me.
Yeah, they've got some decisions to make, haven't they? Because the attack, which is normally absolute cutting edge killer, there's like new plays, new lines, new moves. We didn't really see a lot of that. Um, they've got a bunch of players who are kind of, either retiring, so Healy, Peter Imani, Murray, or they're looking a bit leggy, like Bundyaki, or they're at the end of their careers. Henshaw, Beelum, Furlong, how many years have they got left? So they're at a bit of a transition, shall we say, or getting close to it. They're getting the new tens in, Crowley and Prendergast. So they're in a bit of a interesting situation. Where do they go from here? Some of the provinces aren't performing that well. Leinster obviously still pretty strong. So I don't know. It'd be interesting to see if they can maintain the level that they've been at the last few years, or if there is going to be a bit of a dip.
Yeah, and I mean back to the tens that you were on about, they've still not really decided who their best ten is. That was a bit of a strange one to drop Prendergast near the end.
Yeah, but I think he'd had he'd had quite a few games. He had a lot of games, and Crowley Crowley's a really good player, and I think they just needed to give him game time, to be honest. And there's a bit of ill feeling as well, kind of he's a Munster man. They're not giving him the time, that sort of thing. So I think those two are the tens.
Mm.
It's just how they manage them, and it looks like they prefer Prendergast, doesn't it?
Yeah,
But he'll need time. He'll need a couple of years, I think. I do
yeah,
have a feeling that he could do with not going on the Lions tour this time, just
mm.
personally. But
Yeah.
he's
No, I probably agree with you to be honest.
okay. Right, moving up. England. England finished second in the end. There we go. After a disappointing loss against Ireland at the beginning, they then scraped through, did what they had to do against France, against Scotland, and then turned it on. What happened?
Perfect run of fixtures happened. We ended on a high, which has brought massive positivity to a side that at the start of the tournament no one was positive about, basically. And even after the two wins, not many people were positive about. So, yeah, perfect run of fixtures in that sense. Obviously, as you've said, rode our luck against France and Scotland, but we won, and in fashion where we might not have won in the
Yep.
past sort of year or so. So yeah, just very positive regarding England. We ended up playing some very good rugby as well, which has been a criticism often that we don't necessarily play the most exciting rugby. So to be able to do that and to be able to mix it with the results, just yeah, hugely positive.
Absolutely. And I think it's been a really interesting journey, this Six Nations. And I mean, some people say, look, you had it all wrong. Borthwick kind of had this in hand. This was his plan all along. I'm not really buying that one. But what I have said about Borthwick the whole time is he adapts. He's not set in his ways. So, Eddie Jones, when he was right, he was excellent. But because it was his way or the highway, when he was wrong, he wouldn't change. Borthwick he's kind of learning with the players almost here, and which in some ways you say isn't ideal, but at least he's seeing what's happened. They went into the tournament playing a fairly not negative brand, but kick the ball away and defend brand type of rugby, which even though they won a couple of games, they could see it wasn't working, discussions with the players, whatever, they changed and they made a conscious decision for whatever reason that this is not the way forward. We're going to play a massively different style of rugby for the last two games. And the players stepped up and they showed Borthwick that we can do this. It is worth sticking with. And from the interviews after the Six Nations, it sounds like they have said we are going to carry on with this new, and it is a very new ethos. So yeah, long may it continue.
And now what they need is to win with that new ethos against a proper big name like Ireland or like France, basically in the Six Nations. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's going to be the test, isn't it? And no disrespect to Italy and Wales, they are the two bottom teams of the tournament and have been, and they were kind of a great opposition to try this new way against. To be fair, England were almost perfect against Wales. It's the best I've seen them attack. Just like full stop, everything stuck. The skills were good as well. It wasn't just that they maybe overpowered them in places. It was really, really good. I did a live stream, having a great time against Wales, who thought they could definitely beat England. So that was an amazing way to finish. But like you say, now they need the courage to keep going against higher ranked opposition, even if maybe it doesn't quite work the first time or two. So you can hold me to this one, Charlie. I would prefer England to lose trying to play that way and getting better at playing that way than going back into their shell and eking out maybe a win or something. So don't let me whinge if England carry on this way and don't quite win to start with.
How long would you take it to draw the line though between wanting the results?
Well, I don't know. You got the autumn, so the autumn fixtures are really good. Got to remember them now. So you got Fiji, you got Australia, you got New Zealand, you got Argentina. So they need to play, this positive brand against them. Sometimes maybe it's raining or something. There's situations where you might change briefly, fine. But generally, if they're positive against those four and we see good performances, 2 or 3 wins, I'll be very happy.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that. Obviously, in those autumn games, you can trial new kind of things. I wouldn't like to necessarily see a trialed way of playing in the next Six Nations, but yeah, I can get behind it for the autumn, 1,000,000%.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the trial's done. They've done it in the last 2 games, so I think they're ready to kick on, to be honest. If everyone's not absolutely smashed from the Lions tour, that is. But the other positive I'll finish on for England, because it was a positive finish, is the players have evolved, they've improved, they've stepped up, and we've seen. So Will Stewart, the obvious example, was a kind of run-of-the-mill prop a couple of years ago. Now is knocking on world class. I think that's fair to say. We've seen the 2 younger second rows show their quality, Martin and Chesham. Both Curry boys in the team at the same time, playing at their prime, is something we'd hoped would happen at some point. Ben Curry probably wasn't ready a couple of years ago. Now he is. Tom Curry's recovered. Ben Earl stepped up. He himself has said he's made improvements in his game. Mitchell, we're starting to see him revel in the more open game. I think you stick with the Smiths. They've got 2 different qualities, but I think they're very talented players. Freeman has turned himself into a world-class player. Roebuck's come in. So, do you know what I mean? So, and then you've got the veterans who have shown there's still life in the tank, which I didn't know if Daly had that in the tank still. Atoje's still looking the best he's looked for ages. So this is, if they get this right and keep the group together and then add a couple in, Faye Boso, Pollock as well in the squad somewhere, developing, it could be good. It could become special. And I've always said England have got to push for special. They've got enough players. And if they develop the players and get the game plan right, they got to push for special. So that's what I'm hoping for.
There's enough talent there, definitely, to attain that special that you talk about.
Yeah, I think they've shown the talent is there, and they can play a total rugby attack. They don't have to just kick the ball away and say we're better without the ball. They're good enough to play. Okay, finally, the champions, France. What do you make of them, Charlie? How was their championship?
Yeah, I think they would definitely deserve champions. Possibly, I don't want to say rode their luck at times, but I think they were potentially lucky that the teams they were up against were not necessarily at their best. You look at Ireland, they kind of
Okay.
played them at a good time. You look at, yeah, England, obviously, they lost to, they were very unlucky to lose to England. So, I mean, me saying they were fortunate to play teams when they did, maybe they were unfortunate to have not won a Grand Slam by the end of it. But
Well, it was
yeah,
that. Okay, I won't. I'll just jump in there. I would say it's their own fault they didn't win that England game. I mean, that's their execution. They catch a few more balls. Who knows?
yeah, but when it's things that are almost fundamentals, I'd class them more down as kind of like freak mistakes. I know there was about three of them in the
Yeah,
game, but I'd put them more in the freak mistake category as opposed to the creating your own, problems category, if that makes sense.
yeah. Okay, fair enough.
But yeah, no, I think they were the best team throughout the tournament, mostly. They had very convincing wins against Wales, very convincing wins against, or a very convincing win against Wales and a very convincing win against Italy. Um, Ireland again, they absolutely blew their socks off. That was the defining game for them, and it was always going to be. But yeah, that was an unbelievable performance. Obviously, Scotland, they were slightly fortunate with that potential red card. I'm not sure what your thoughts are on
Oh,
that, but
very
yeah,
fortunate. Very fortunate. Yeah, that
yeah,
was. I mean, it's lucky he didn't connect properly. I think
mm,
it looks like he might get a ban on review in retrospect after the game. But if he'd connected with that diving headbutt, and then like you'd say, this guy shouldn't play for a year or something. I don't know. It was very strange. And
yeah,
but that is and that highlights France still have those wobbly moments in them. You know,
mm,
crazy decision by Damien Penaud in one game not to clear the ball and just to amble about the Malvaca thing. They in a tournament maybe that's why they haven't won more than they have with this team. Obviously, last 2 years they had good team and didn't win. They've got these wobbly games in them. And
yeah, and they seem to create their own mistakes as well.
yeah,
On that note, yeah,
that's it. Yeah, yeah. Those, I mean, the inexplicable drops against England, and then, but then when they get it right, when they turn it on, they are the best team because they're unstoppable. You've got the power and the continuity like Toulouse play, and then the kicking of Ramos, and then the individual brilliance of Dupont and Biel Barry. It's such a potent mix. It's like when South Africa get it right, it's a bit like that when they've got the power, but also you got your Sneymans and your Etzebeth offloading and Peter Steph the toy, and you're like, this is unplayable. So
mm,
when they get it right, they probably win most games, but
yeah,
they struggle to string that together. They've never won the World Cup, remember?
mm,
And this team is the one, the Dupont team. Hopefully, he comes back from his injury. This is the one that they need to win the World Cup.
yeah. And I still don't think they win the World Cup with this team. But as good as they are, yeah, they. I'm not sure what it is. They lack something, and to win a World Cup, they just lack something. And I know it's a bit stupid to say straight after they've just won a Six Nations, but there's just something that almost cutting edge. But again, they have won the Six Nations, so it's like it's hard to say that now. But in terms of a World Cup, I still think they probably won't.
Well, well, who knows? I mean, the thing is, with them, like I said, it's consistency, and the World Cup is so many games.
Mm.
If they're going to win a World Cup, I can't believe we're talking about this, but anyway,
Yeah.
if they win a World Cup, they could almost do with bumbling through the rounds and
Mm.
then just having their worldie in the final.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like their unplayable game in the final, sort of thing. Because I don't know if they can really back up two, three, four perfect games in a row, but
Mm.
maybe they can.
Yeah. But I mean, they to some extent they did do that in the Six Nations with
Yeah.
winning 4 out of 5. But then
Sure, well,
the one they
Italy
didn't win.
absolutely smashed Italy. They smashed Ireland, and they were comfortable against Scotland without really
Mm.
turning it on. So
Yeah.
maybe they can.
Yeah, I don't think we saw the true potential of them against apart from against Italy. That was them at their absolute like.
What do you mean, Ireland or Italy or both?
Oh well, actually, sorry, I completely forgot about the Ireland game. I mean Ireland and Italy. Yeah, those two games for me were France almost at their best, and then apart from that, they were like I don't want to say average because they were definitely not average, but not at their absolute best.
Yeah, well, short-term goal. I think they've got to try and go for that number one ranking. There's no World Cup for a couple of years, so they're currently fourth, and it feels like if they get it right, they should be better than fourth. So I think that's one thing they can aim towards.
Yeah, I'm not really sure of the permutations how they can get to there in such a short term. I'm not sure if you're more familiar
Oh
with
yeah,
who they need to beat and stuff, but
it all depends on the fixture list. The way you fly up the rankings is you beat a team a long way above you, so they need to be
yeah,
playing South Africa, New Zealand, those teams.
yeah.
That's who
And
they need
are
to
and
be
are they
playing.
due to play them? I'm
Ireland, of
genuinely
course.
not.
I can't remember offhand, to be fair.
Yeah, I that's more what I was asking because I'm not sure whether they're
No.
actually due to play them.
Okay. Well, anyway, there we go, guys. That's our thoughts on every team in the Six Nations, how their tournament went, the big picture stuff, and add stuff in. Please pop down below what you thought of the tournaments for each of the teams, positives, negatives. How do you see them moving on? And yeah, thank you very much for sticking with us with this Six Nations and with our series with Charlie here. Charlie, thank you so much for joining me for these shows.
Thank you very much for having me.
Brilliant. Do subscribe, guys, if you haven't already. Really appreciate that. And we will catch you next time.